Hey, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be continuing on with the upgrade system from last time in the workshop level. With that, let's get into it. So I forgot to do this in the previous video, but just in the edit, project settings, and then we'll go maps and modes, and then we're going to set it up because we still have the editor setup map as the dealership, although we're working in the workshop right now. So we set it to workshop. And with that, then we're going to be in the performance widget just so we can set up the navigation. I'm going to go event graph. And then since we're busy with the Pistons widget, we're going to do the Pistons. So for the Pistons, unclick, just going to right click and then remove from parent. And then from there, drag off and then create the widget. And then the widget we're looking for is the Pistons. And then from the return value, drag off and then add to viewport. Okay, so that's that. And then also the back button. So let's just do the back button also. The event graph, unclick, and then we're just gonna copy this, Control D, connect that, and then by the just remove the add to viewport. And the widget we're looking for is the workshop widget. Then from the return value, drag off and then add to viewport. And then compile, save. Then we can close this for now. So we're gonna go to the Pistons widget, and then we're gonna start. I forgot to rename the text block here. We'll just do this real quick. Change this to back. And then we'll, while we're here, just set it up. Select it, graph, and then unclick. Then we're gonna drag off. And then we're gonna remove from parent. And then we're gonna create the widget. And then the widget we're gonna be creating is the performance widget. And then we're gonna add this to the viewport. And then now we're going to do the factory first. So select the factory button, the graph, unclick, and then by the factory, it is the simplest one. We're just gonna reset everything to its default. So we are going to get, oh, we didn't actually do that. Okay, let's do that. Move this up a bit, and then underneath the event construct, right click, and then get game instance. And then from the game instance, drag off and then cost to BPGI game, connect the execution pin, drag off on the as BPGI game, and then I'm gonna promote this to a variable, and then we're just gonna compile, and then by the unclick for the factory, drag in the variable, drag off, and then get BPS garage cars, and then before we go further, we need to create the function to get the vehicle ID. So under the functions, load vehicle ID. Then here we're gonna drag off and then look for does save game exist. One we're looking for is the vehicle ID. And the return value, drag off and then branch from the true, drag off and then load game from slot. The slot is the vehicle ID. And then from the return value, drag off and then cost to BP save game. Then from the BP save game, drag off get vehicle ID. And then drag off there. And then promote this to a variable, connect the execution pin, and then compile, add to the event graph on the event construct, drag in the function, and then back to the factory by the PPS garage cars, drag off and then get a reference, drag in the vehicle ID, drop it on the pen, and then from the get, drag off and then set members in PPS vehicles. And then the one we're going to be setting, we are working on the Pistons. So you just scroll down or in the search, you can search and look for piston. What I'm looking for is the piston variable. And then I'm going to set this back to 1. So whenever the player clicks on the factory, we're going to reset this to only a value of 1 so that it doesn't actually affect the car's final torque value. And then connect the execution pin. And then after this, we're going to drag off and then create save game object. And then we're going to look for the BPS save game. And then from the return value, drag off and then promote the variable. And then this one is BP save game. And then from the set, drag off and then set BPS garage cars. And then we're going to take these points over here, Control D, and then connect that to the set, connect the execution pin, and then from the set BPS broadcast, drag off and then save game to slot, drag in the BPS save game variable, drop that on the save game object, and then the slot name is the owned cars. And then that will be that. And then also we need to make it so that the text under the factory that we added, the factory text, does then say that the factory component has, or the factory stage has been installed. So we need to create a function for that. So back out to the functions, add functions, and then we're going to call this factory install. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the factory text under the variables, drag this in, and then we're going to drag off, and then we're going to say set text, and then connect that. And then in the in text, we're going to set it to installed. And then we're going to drag in the stage 1 text, stage 2 text, and the stage 3 text, and then take the set text, Control D, connect the execution pin, and then this one we're going to set this to say nothing at all, and then connect the 3 stages. Then we're going to compile, and then while we're here, we might as well do it for all of the other stages because you're going to swap them in and out between whichever stage it is. So we're going to take the factory installed, Control D, rename this to stage 1 installed, and then here we're going to take stage 1, drag it to where the factory is, take the factory to where the stage 1 was, connect it to the second text, and then connect the stage 1 to the first text, and then just disconnect the connections, and then we're going to do the same again for stage 2. So just rename the function, take stage 1, swap it out with stage 2, disconnect the noodles, then connect them to the proper set text, and then we're going to do the last one for stage 3. Same process, swap out the variables, connect them to the appropriate set text, and then just disconnect the noodles, and then that will be it. And compile, save, then back to the event graph. So now after the factory, we can now drag in the factory installed, and then set it up as such. And then another thing we need to do is create another function that we're going to add to the event construct. And then this one we're going to call it check stage installed. So then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to take, let's go to the event graph real quick. Then we're going to take the SBP check game and the BPS vehicles along with the get in the vehicle ID. We'll take this. Then we're going to Control C, add to the function, Control V, and then after the get, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to break, and then we're going to look for the drop down, and then get the piston. So from the piston, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to look for equal, select the break, and then hide unconnected. So then what we're going to do here is now we're going to start checking for which stage is installed based on the multiplication value that each component is going to add. I'm going to keep this simple for the first stage. I'm going to make this 1.1, and then we're going to have a branch, connect the execution pin, and then we're going to have it like that. And then if it's as such, we're going to take the stage 1 installed code, Control C, and then paste it over here. So then it's going to be the same. And then if it's not 1.1, drag off from the false, add another branch, and then take the equals, Control D, gonna connect that, and then want to make this 1.2, then add that as the condition, and then we're gonna do the stage 2 installed code, just Control C that, and then come back, and then Control V, and then connect it to the true. And then we're just going to repeat this process. So then these will be the values that you would work out as to how much each stage is going to contribute to the overall base torque and then final torque. So for the purpose of the video, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to make it 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. So we're going to repeat the process again. Just control the equals on the branch, connect it to the Pistons, and then we're going to set this to 1.3, connect this to the false, and then take the stage 3 install code, control C, control V, and then we're going to connect it to the true. And then if it's neither of these, then that must mean that it is the factory. I'm going to go to the factory, take this code, control C, and then paste it at the bottom. So if it's none of the stages, then it's the factory. So then I'm going to connect that. So that's how it's going to look. We're going to compile, attach the event graph on the event construct. After the load vehicle ID, we're going to take the check stage installed, drag it in, connect it, compile, save, and then we're going to quickly go test it out to see if it works. So play the level. They want to head over to performance, Pistons. So now as you can see here at the bottom, we currently have it set to 1. So it says factory installed. So the code does work. With that, we can proceed forward. So now we have tested out and we saw that the code does work. So now we're going to do the stage 1. I'm going to select stage 1. And then we're going to go on click. So then for the stage 1, we're going to take the beginning of the factory code, the SBBJ game, BPS garage course, figure IP and the get. I'm going to control D. And then from the get, we're going to drag off and then break. And then what we're going to look for is the Pistons. I'm going to over here for the BPS Pistons. I'm going to drag off here and then break this as well. Select the break BPS vehicles and just hide unconnected. And then here we only need the stage 1, so hide the other 2 stages. And then from stage 1, drag off and then look for a branch, connect the execution pin. And then if we already have stage 1, which means we have purchased it, we're going to do the same thing as we did for the factory. So we can take the beginning code over here, control D. Actually, we can take the whole code, not just that part. I'm going to take the whole code up to the save game to slot, control D, just move it out a bit, connect it to the true, and then we set it to the Pistons, which is 1.1. And then after that, we drag in the stage 1 installed. So just drag that to after the save game to slot, connect that. And then that is it for if the player already purchased a stage 1 Piston and then wants to reinstall it. But if that's not the case, then we need to run a different code. So for that, we're going to need a new variable. So I'm going to need a new variable, and then we're going to call this Pistons stage, and this is going to be of type integer. And just compile, and then what we're going to do is by the default, we're going to drag in the Piston stage. So Alt, drag it in, and then what I like to do is I like to keep the value the same as the stage. So instead of starting at 0, we're going to start at 1. And then after we set the Piston stage, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to remove from parent. And then from there, drag off and then create widget. And then the widget we're creating is the Piston pop-up. And then we're going to add this to the page. There's something missing over here, so let's just move over to the Pistons pop-up, compile, then head over to the Pistons pop-up, head over to the graph. So in the Pistons pop-up, we're going to move the 2 top nodes out the way, and then by the event construct, right click and then get game instance. From the get game instance, drag off and then cost to BPGI game, connect the execution pin, drag off from the SBPGI game, and then promote to variable. Then we're going to create a function. This function is going to be the load vehicle ID, which we can just copy from the Pistons widget. So just find it, and then we're going to drag the entire code, Control C, then Control V, and then just connect that, and then select the set, which is not grayed out, and then create variable vehicle ID, and then compile, head back to the event graph, drag it in the load vehicle ID, and then we're going to create a variable. We're going to call this distance stage, same as the other one. This is also going to be of type integer. So we're going to drag this in with Control, and then we're also going to drag it in with Alt, and then connect the two, and then select the piston stage, and then we're going to make it instance editable and expose on spawn, and then compile, save, head back to the Pistons widget. In the event graph, select the create widget, right click, and then refresh nodes. So now we have the piston stage. So from the set, we're just going to drag this and put it over here as such. We're going to compile again and then save. And then this will pretty much be the code for the other two stages as well. All we're going to do is just actually let's do that now while we're here. And then we can move over to the Pistons pop-up. So we're going to select the stage 2. And then we're going to go on click. Then we're going to copy the entire code, minus the node, Control D, set it up, connect the execution pin to the branch, and then just swap out the break BPS instead of stage 1 for stage 2, connect it to the condition, set the pistons from 1.1 to 1.2, change the piston stage from 1 to 2, and then remove the stage 1 installed and instead put the stage 2 installed. And then we'll do the same for the stage 3. On click, and since we already copied the code, we can just Control V, connect the execution pin, swap out the stage 1 for stage 3, change the stage on the set to 3, change the value by the set members from 1.1 to 1.3, remove the stage 1 installed and use the stage 3 installed instead. And then that will be it for the code in the Pistons widget. Compile, save. Now we're going to do the Pistons pop-up. I think this is what I'm going to do it for this video, and I don't want to make it any longer than it needs to be. There's still quite a bit of code to add to the Pistons pop-up. There's a lot of checking and such that needs to happen before we can actually purchase the car, because we need to check first the tier of the car and then add the calculations for the multiplication between the different tiers, and we're just going to take a while, and I don't want the video to be excessively long. So in the next video, we're going to do the Pistons pop-up so we can purchase the car, and then we'll see how far we get with that one, and then we will then duplicate it and swap out all the necessary components and pieces of code for the other components in the upgrade. But with that is how we're going to end it for this video, and until the next one.